Deserving of a life that is not only seen through trauma, a fight or flight, a life surrounded or guided by your traumas, that your expressions, your self limitations are proven strong because of something that had happened to you. You deserve to know a life outside of everything that happened to you. Let it not be the most interesting thing you tell people when you meet them. Let it not be the story that defines your life. That's why today, although we can change it, we can walk through it and give ourselves a version of you that trauma doesn't explain, and a version of you that lives in our own truth, a version of you that make choices because they suit your needs and your wants. Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Nkemek-nti and it's so good to have you back. Today I'm going to be speaking on a very important topic that I've been wanting to talk about: how to heal your traumas. I think it's one of the most important steps in life as an adult, to be able to understand what situations you've been through, to understand ourselves through the dynamics life has shown us in, and how to cater to the person that you are or the person that you want to become. You know, the simple idea that we have of traumas is nothing of going through a very bad situation. You think of ways of coping, and your easiest ways of coping is that's the grace story. You're gonna become a bigger person in society, and then it's gonna make up for all the troubles or for all the pain that I've been through. But I think we can come back to reality, and actually to be able to live through life is to actually understand who we are, to understand ourselves through what we've been through, or to understand ourselves through the dynamics life has shown us in. And trauma, the definition in which I saw on Google, is like a distressing situation that overwhelms a person's ability to cope and can have lasting negative effects on a person's well-being. But with that definition, I think life is way beyond the biggest or the most traumatic events that happen. It's also in the simplest ways in which life can happen to you that has compounded and built up this person in which you do not recognize. I think we can heal from big family issues. We can heal from childhood traumas, but we can also heal from the pressures of society or the impact of being in an environment that was not good for you. We can heal from the pressure in which we put on ourselves to be so much better than who we think that we are. To heal is to be able to accept one's. One of the biggest things that I want to talk about in this video is the cycle of trauma, and how I got myself to the point in which I really enjoy or like this version of myself. So let's get into this video. A little backstory: I do not really like getting vulnerable in when I'm trying to let people know how to live life, but I think it is important to also tell a story about my life. I grew up with separated parents when I was a year old, and in the midst of my parents separating, they went on to marry different people. I never really saw my parents' marriage because I was a year old and my senior sister was 3. But in knowing their relationship, I got to see them as separated parents raising children, as well as seeing them be with other people. That cycle of trauma, or that cycle of living, led to so many traumatic events. I was put in a situation of being maltreated by my stepmom, and also living with my stepdad, who wasn't really necessarily a good person. There were so many things that I had to live through as a younger me. Growing older, my mom was able to step out of our marriage, which wasn't good, and she kind of gave us a life that was different from the life in which we were living. With that said, I started living life thinking that I was good because we had moved on from all the situations that had happened. But I didn't realize that those events that had happened in my life had molded me to be this person. One of the things was that I never spoke my mind. I was so quiet to a point that I was so scared that I would never really say anything that was wrong with me, or would never speak my mind to people, because I was scared of being criticized, or I was scared that maybe my voice will be shut down. I think when I sat back as my older self and thought about why am I so quiet when I meet people who spoke up so much more, who would easily tell their parent how they felt, who would speak their mind without any fault, I questioned why I was so easily silenced. That took me through a rabbit hole when I realized all of the dynamics and the situations in which my life was put in that made me easily a quiet person. I wasn't in an environment that gave me the confidence or the freedom to really speak my mind. I was such an observant child. Because I was so quiet, I leaned back and paid more attention. I think even before I even tried to speak, I paid attention to the way in which other people were being responded to. So it actually gave me an insight to go, oh, this environment is not really good for me to speak. I had a much safer option to always be silent. There are other impacts these things or these events that I'd lived through had impacted my personality or the person that I was. I wasn't fine in being that person because I was now in an environment that required for me to speak up for myself. It needed me to have strength in my voice to be able to communicate, to be assertive, to state how I feel, to also have a radiance to my personality, to really be expressive, to be vibrant in all those aspects. And I decided that to do that, I had to understand what was the issue and why I wasn't so free to be that person. And now realizing that I was really in a good place to become this person that I thought I could become. So one of the cycle of processing trauma is reflection. Reflecting to your past. It was almost like going back in time and being that little child again and standing in the middle of the places that I'd lived or the places that I'd been to. I was watching a movie of myself and then realizing where the issues or the problem areas were. Seeing so much more of the dynamic in which I had been experiencing and then seeing it almost like a third person. Reflections, you get to understand patterns, you get to understand behaviors. I learned about the differences of who my parents were and who I was. One of the biggest or the belief systems that I had for myself, which are the limitations that trauma causes, is like it creates these systems of beliefs for you. Was that I was unlucky, being taught these ideas of what life was around the people who were family, and it also was this idea of how unlucky they were, and I carried that idea with myself. But then I looked back and saw people whose life it seemed like they were so lucky. I got to realize that it was the series of life choices and life decisions that they had made, or the life decisions they are living through, that is so different from the life choices and the decisions that the people who had been around were making, that had impacted my life in a way that I felt that I was unlucky. For me to now understand that I actually have a choice to make my life the way that I want it to. Not necessarily to the fullest point that life will go the way you want, but I do understand that my decisions and the choices that I make do have a great influence on the type of life that I end up living. Recognizing those patterns, unlearning behaviors in which you are thought were the right way to live, and finally starting to seek answers for all those things that you've been through. We are reflecting on what trauma, on this cycle of trauma. One of the things is understanding the effects that it has on you, how it changes or how it limits your perspective of the world. The world is so much bigger than you. You have to realize that the environment you're in kind of caves you into the ideas that they have. So it affects your confidence, it affects your self-esteem, also limits your self-beliefs or your systems of belief, how it rationalizes your fears and anxiety, it influences your behavior and how you end up responding to the world. Kind of coin the wound that trauma leaves behind to be like a wound that almost like eats at you. It is never enough, regardless of how much medication you give to it. It keeps asking for more, only because that's not the right treatment for it, right? So it's almost like I can't. There's so many metaphors I want to use for it. It's almost like vultures eating at a dead animal, or it's like a bottomless pit that is never full. It's like a decay that just wants more and more. It wants you to keep being defensive. It wants you to keep being this, to keep being that. That's the way you face the world because it's the only way you know how. It keeps asking more of you, and then you keep giving it and say, this is the way I am because this happened to me. But that's truly not the way in which you should be, because that's not even who you are. Who are you? Picking apart oneself. You gotta pick apart yourself. gotta pick apart the personalities. You have to ask questions. I think my curiosity was the biggest thing that has saved me in life. Because if I simply accepted what was told to me or what was given to me, and it wasn't enough, I'm almost crying. It wouldn't have saved me to just believe. If you're questioning life, then maybe the certain ways in which you had lived was not normal. The myth of normalcy is a bit hard, like there is a myth to normalcy, because when you go through different parts of the world, there is a sense of normalcy that is abnormal to you. My sense that I said, recognizing that nothing about the life that you lived was normal is the first step, and the ways that life also molded you. Sense of reflection and that sense of realization is going to take you to a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and a lot of anger, and even a sense of resentment. I had a great sense of anger, frustration, and hurt from that situation. I think this is one of the stages where I think people stop, is when they have that realization and they are angry about it and they are hurt and they're in pain, they don't move on. They kind of rally around that pain. And I think this is the stage that, in the sense of like family trauma, or in the sense of like trauma which happens to you based off of someone around you, this is when they lash out on those people. I didn't have the privilege to lash out on everybody because I was miles away in another country. But that resentment, pain, and the hurt that I had, people that I loved, I had to seek an understanding for why they did those things. And I came to the conclusion that they were so limited as human beings in being who they were. And it wasn't easy for them to have provided a life that I wanted for myself, even before I could state this was the life I wanted. They were living in a cycle of the life that was suiting for them, or a life as much as it wasn't suiting for them, they were having to struggle through it, or they were making decisions based off the ideas that they had of the world. So how easy would it have been for them to live a life that was perfect for me when they didn't even know what I wanted? So I had to understand their limitations as human beings. And it is one that is a bit hard, is one that takes a lot of understanding and takes a lot of empathy, and it also takes a lot of forgiving. For certain people, I would never forgive them and I would never understand, and they're not in my life. But for the people that I love and for the people that had to show up, that still consistently showed up for me, but in ways that I realized they had hurt me, and realized that they had a way in which they molded my life, in which I had a dissatisfaction for, I had to find a sense of self to understand and forgive. But I had to learn to start communicating those needs from that moment. One of the things that I wrote in this aspect was, do not react outwardly, first instinct, as now you have added problems to solve. Bad times with the people that have hurt you, and if you care about them, it becomes an added burden. These issues brought us here, right? Asking that these people who wronged you recognize it is not going to take that pain away. And that's what a lot of people are trying to do, is like trying to relieve the pain in which they are living. And I think sometimes it's asking that person for an apology. It's like asking that person, do you recognize my pain? Do you see the pain you had put me through? They're like, not really. Or yes, I do. In a sense, does the apology relieve the pain in which you had gone through? To a certain degree, it's nice for someone to recognize it, but it doesn't take the pain away. To be honest, it doesn't. Sometimes it becomes like a forgotten story, but one day you're sitting on a bus and then you remember something that once happened to you, and it it takes you back to that moment when you realize, oh, I was a child going through this, and it sunkens your heart, and then you're so sad, and it even gets you to cry. So even if someone that had done all those things to me, that is making me sit on a bus right now and cry, had told me, I'm so sorry I did this, it doesn't take that pain away for me to still remember it. That's where I'm going with this point of mine. It's like, it's only that if they're in your life, they recognize the behavior that they put you at a disadvantage or discomfort, Because regardless of their willingness to rectify it, it wholeheartedly has become our pain to bear and shit and relieve ourselves of all those circumstances and everything that has made us is our responsibility to uphold and heal from. And our expression of that anger and frustration or need to be heard or resonated with, it's not everything you need to be at peace with oneself. Number three point of the cycle of processing one's trauma to healing is resentment. Number four is coming into an understanding. It's so important. I loved this stage so much because at the stage of hurt, anger, and frustration, I had so much resentment for everyone, and I was just like, I wish they were here so I could tell them a piece of my mind. Like, why would they do that to me? I resented every shit out of those people who hurt me. But I had to come into an understanding, and I've already explained it earlier, in terms of they are human, they are limited, and this sense of saying that people are human, we think that because a person is human that they're meant to be good. Human is a balance of everything. It's a balance of good and evil, and certain people have a likeliness of more good than evil. So if you understand a person to be human, you understand that they have the likeliness to be evil and they also have the likeliness to be good. So when you see them and you go, oh, why would that person do this to me? You have to understand that they have a little bit of evil in them to be able to do that to you. Understanding that humans are so limited. They are like, oh, I'm gonna be a father. It doesn't mean that they have every capability to be a good father. It was so contradicting to me when I was trying to understand because I didn't want to be resentful. To be honest, I didn't want to be resentful of the people I loved, and one of the person that I loved was my dad. He's late, so I had no opportunity to be resentful towards the man. I was resentful towards his actions in my early years of age. One of the things that had happened was I had a situation with living with my mom and my stepdad, and I had run back to my dad's house uh, in terms of like protection or for care. And I already had a series of situations with my stepmom in which I could not come back to the house. Not necessarily was I sent away from the house, but I couldn't live with the woman. The woman just basically was maltreating me and my sister, and at the same time was threatening to poison us. But when I lived with my mom and my stepdad and it was unbearable, I ran back to my dad's house, and my stepmom wasn't around. So one day, mm, my mom came to say, come, I'll take you to my friend's house to stay instead, because it wasn't even right that I stayed with my dad, considering of the history I had with my stepmom. This would be a story for another day. I had moments in which I wish my dad stood up for me. I had moments in which I just wish he was a bit more like aggressive, but at the same time, the people who were aggressive were not good for me. They were treating me like shit. The people who had aggression and passion and were always angry and frustrated, they were also unbearable. But I remember as a grown adult, I was like, I wish this man had stood up a bit more. He was less meek. He was this. But I absolutely loved those things about that man because I saw it in myself. I was looking at this man and I was like critiquing him for everything that he was. I was like, why was he so meek? He should have stood up for me more. But at the same time, I had those behaviors. I was a very meek person that, to a point, in one time in my life, people used to hurt me, and I'll never say that shit hurts. I'll never say, oh my God, what you did, I wasn't happy about it. I never really spoke my mind. So that same level of meekness is the one in which I am really criticizing in another person, but I have it in myself. And I also had to look at the life in which this person had lived and know that they didn't even have the space to be able to question themselves and ask this and do this, but they were taking up big responsibilities. So as much as they had put themselves in the position that needed them to be a lot of things, they didn't have or they didn't build those skill set to become that person. So it was contradictory to say, oh, this is such a good human in the qualities in which they have, but this person is so limited or is so bad in this way. And then I just realized, oh, they were good in this, and two truths can exist. It's a very complex understanding of a human being that I can't really default them into one being, except they were a robber. Like if you got robbed, it's like a one chance experience. People whose experiences or traumatic experiences are in relation to the people they actually love or family, biological families. I don't mean men. We have to kind of have a bigger sense of understanding if only we do value those relationships. If not, then you do have to come to an understanding that actually drives you to your own conclusions or drives you to your own being. You can't default these people into one thing, because I think it was even hard to default them, because it's like, oh, they're so bad. Why did they treat me like that? But then I was like, oh no, it doesn't really fall like that, because this person was good in this aspect. So it's so complex, and then you now realize, oh, it's a balance of both, and it can actually help me process this so much better. Then there is grief. You grieve everything that you weren't. You grieve everything that you didn't become. You grieve, oh, I wish this was the life in which I had. If I had lived this type of life, I would have gotten to be this type of person. Or I grieve the moment in which I was meant to be a happy child and I wasn't. You grieve it so hard. You cry about it. It might be your darkest days. It's hard. It hits you so strong, but then, like they say, you mourning lasts for a night, and then there is joy in the morning. So that's where you come into acceptance. Acceptance is the biggest step in healing. It is just embracing the way that I've recently written it into words. It's embracing it so much that it could pierce your heart, but with time and care, that wounds heal. When I came into this sense of self, it was just really grounding myself and saying, that happened. This was the stage you went through. But how old are you now? I'm 17. What is happening right now? This is the person I am. How did that influence you? It made me this, it made me that. But then what are you going to do right now? I want to do this better. I'm going on my journey to do this and this better. I want to preference this sense of acceptance or this stage in life to be one where you critique yourself to be a better person, for you to then accept yourself. No, it's to accept yourself of every fault in that moment in which you are. This is my reality. This is the reality I live. This was my truth. But it's sort of distant, or it's sort of here, or wherever it's at. That's the reality I've lived in. I really have to accept it. It's not perfect. It's just me. It's not who my next neighbor is. It's not, I wish I was this type of child anymore. If my parents had treated me this and this way and this way, I would have been so confident like my friend. If I had lived this life, I would have been this, I would have been that. You really let go of those idealized reasonings of self, that sense of comparison with another person who had lived a life that you think is more desirable. And then you just accept yourself, hug yourself and the being that you are, and let every other thing in which you think you could have been or who you would have become be something that is a wish and a want, and is not the thing that you focus on or obsess over. Understanding deeply what happened to you and what dynamics shaped your life is the actual only way you can have any sense of choice. And that sense of choice in this moment is really just accepting it, that it has happened. It shaped me this way. It made me not like myself in this and this aspect. It analyzes my fear in the sense that, oh, I once got into an accident. So now every time a car swerves this way, I am reminded that it's possible that I could have another accident. You are not less of what you are because of what happened to you. Who you become or what you make of life is actually the actions that you now have the choice to make. What happened to you or how life happened to you, even if it had an inkling of your own actions in it, you you now still have the ability to take a different action to a different reality. So now it's the future or the present, it's in your hands. So healing kind of lets go of the obsession over what was or what would have been. It lets go of the comparison, steals your joy. It doesn't eliminate your pain or the hurt or the things that you've been through, but it makes it so much easier to understand. It lessens the burden of the pain. Being able to accept oneself is the biggest thing you can do. And this is so hard, but I think this was the the nicest place that I'd gotten to when I arrived at it. And I knew when I arrived at it. And because you just walk through life one certain way, you don't fault yourself for not being able to do it. It's really a step for you to actually build on the skill set that you don't have to start living life in a way in which you want to show up more. What does your life require? What is life asking of you? And you're like, oh, I want to show up to life. I want to show up for life in the way in which it's asking of me. And then you build on those skill set that life needs you or people around you need, your relationship needs you for in those aspects. So those are just like the realities in which I live by as a person. It's not for the betterment of like I would never remember my traumas anymore and I'm so healed. That's not how emotional healing works. It resurfaces, but it's just really like grounding yourself and understanding what truly you have been through to actually understand how to live life, having been through what you've been through. Mistakes not to make because you were traumatized, excusing your behaviors because of what happened to you. One of the things my mom taught me, and I think I really stand by this, and it's really hard for me to do a lot of bad things because I can't explain it. My mom was a teacher, so she used to ask like almost like she was a bit psychological in the way she used to ask questions. You couldn't excuse certain behaviors. For example, if you stole meat from the pot, she would ask you, why did you steal the meat from the pot? And you're like, oh, because I was hungry. So why didn't you ask me? And you think about it and you're like, if I asked mommy, would she have beaten me? And you're like, oh no, mommy, I didn't think so, or I thought so. So it will now drive us to a conclusion where you realize, so did you think it was okay for you to go to the pot to take meat without telling anybody, without and you'll be like, no. So all those things, it's like you don't really have a space to excuse your behavior for a certain reason. You don't give other people ground for their own stories. Your stories over traumatizes any other person's story. I went through this, and it's like, that's simple. I went through the worst. I got hit by a Mercedes Benz. I got hit by a truck. What are you talking about? It's not even that hard. Why are you emotional about it? Like not giving other people ground to tell their own stories, to empathize with them, instead of it to be a sense of empathy. I'm so sorry you went through that. That must have been hard. Having been through a similar experience or having been through something that was also traumatic, you don't find a common ground for you to bridge your sense of pain or to comfort each other through those pain, but instead it's a sense of war of who went through worst. Another thing was making your reality factual. When your reality is this idealized reality that you have, or because you've been through something, if someone else said they've been through an opposite experience to what you had experienced, you say, no, that is not true. What I experience is the truth, but it is your truth and not the reality or the truth of the world. Other people are living in opposite realities of what you've been through. So when you are faced or being in a situation that forces you to be open, you have to create that sense of openness. Your reality is not factual, it's factual to you, it's truthful to you, but there is so many other realities in which you have to create a sense of openness for, even a sense of understanding. You don't have to tolerate it, you don't have to believe that it's the that it stands as true, but that openness to understanding it is really important. Associating every bit of yourself and your behaviors to trauma. I have commonly seen this thing where people consider badly behaved girls to have daddy issues. So I think maybe that has taken a lot of people on spirals to question their relationship with their dad, and why their relationship with their dad not being good has caused them to be this type of person. But I truly don't believe in that. I believe in the fact, or I have seen the realities in which people have been through difficult situations, and that has given them every light and every hope to be a better person, to be someone who inspire others to be good. Seeing every bad aspect of your behavior ongoing, that has to do with my trauma. It's not necessarily a good way to handle it. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help you through this process of living. Really believe that your self deserves a different version of what you've been through. You have to live through life through a different version of what has happened to you. You're not what has happened to you. You're who you decide to discover and who you decide to be, from the moment in which you take accountability and put your life in your hands and throw no blame to other people. So that is all for today. That was a very long yap session. And thank you so much for watching. And if you stayed to the end, be sure to like and subscribe. And if you do enjoy or like this type of content, I will be posting a similar or more topics in relation to our emotional well-being. And thank you for being here. My name is Nkemek, and see you in my next video. Bye bye.